How goes it, guys? My name is John. This is Across the Board, and today we're going to start breaking down the 2019 free agency in the NFL and the tracking stuff that's already happened. Today is March 11th, so free agency has not opened. It will be teams can actually start signing guys in 2 days, but there's already been hella shit that's went on. So let's start breaking it down. Okay, so I'm not gonna start with the stuff that's went on with Antonio Brown. Me as a Steelers fan, I'm obviously going to just make that a whole different video. I'm going to start with what happened with 49ers. 49ers signed Quan Alexander, former Tampa Bay Buccaneers linebacker Quan Alexander. I'm a massive fan of Quan. Only 24. He signed a 4-year deal worth $54 million. I really like this deal, personally. He'll only be 28 when the contract's up. $27 million of it guaranteed, so literally half. I see here on ESPN, Bill Barnwell gave it a D+. And a lot of that reasoning to do is because that they had Reuben Foster, and now they had to replace Reuben Foster, and they knew what kind of risks that they were taking with Reuben Foster. I'm not taking all of that into consideration here. I'm just taking in consideration the signing that they made. I think that the main thing that they need to focus on is a wide receiver. But there's not a amazing wide receiver out of this class. I thought the 49ers should have been in more for Antonio Brown, but they got to work on their defense as well. And giving a massive contract to a guy like Quan Alexander is extremely smart. This deal now makes Quan Alexander the #1 highest paid inside linebacker. Do I think that he's the best linebacker? No. Obviously, that goes to guys like Bobby Wagner and Luke Kuechly. But when their contracts are up, it just set the market for it. Probably about $13.5 million per year. Again, I really like this deal. I'm only going to break down the massive deals, so I'm not going to hit on kind of the little deals. If there's one that hits me personally for personal reasons, maybe I'll talk about it. But I'm just going to get to the big name players. Next up, safety, Landon Collins. Landon Collins signed with Washington for a 6-year, $84 million contract. Getting a 6-year deal is pretty massive for Landon Collins. We know how Washington operates. They're always the winner in free agency, or one of the winners in free agency, and it never seems to correlate to wins. But I think Landon Collins, I didn't think Landon Collins was only 25. I thought he was older. He, as a Steelers fan, again, he was probably the #1 guy other than Le'Veon Bell that I wanted on the team.
Oh, honey.
To sign Le'Veon Bell back. If you've listened to the podcast, you know my love of Le'Veon Bell.
Oh, honey.
I mean, $45 million of it guaranteed, so a little bit over half guaranteed. I love this deal for Landon Collins, and I still like it for Washington. 6 years is a lot, but no, this makes a lot of sense. I know that his inspiration was Shaun Alexander, and that's where he wore number 21 in New York. So this makes a lot of sense. Next up is Detroit Lions signing Trey Flowers, formerly of the New England Patriots. The Patriots didn't re-sign Trey Flowers. Didn't really surprise me. They don't put a ton of money into that, and I feel like they are just going to go try to find the next Trey Flowers. And knowing the New England Patriots, they probably will. Between $16 and $17 million is projected contract money per year with a 5-year deal. I like this deal. When I do mock drafts, I haven't put out any mock draft because I hate that there's always like a 12.0 mock draft. I'll probably make a mock draft before the draft, maybe 2. Maybe I'll put out 2 mock drafts, but probably just 1 before the draft. And one of the things I was slotting for the Lions was a pass rusher, either a pass rusher or corner. I think this really bodes well for Greedy Williams to be picked by Detroit, but they needed a pass rusher really, really bad. And they have a terrific defensive line. Yeah, I don't hate this deal. I like this deal more for Detroit than I do Trey Flowers. I don't know how much Detroit's going to be competing. They do have a great defensive line, like I said. They do have Darius Slay, so if they go and get Greedy Williams, that shores up the cornerbacks positions. But I still feel like they're a few years away, and they're putting a lot of money into that. But maybe they have intentions of winning and competing for the playoffs. More than I think that they have. So if that is in their sights, Trey Flowers is a great first signing to try to get back to the playoffs. All right, so now we get to the first one where I hate the deal. Cincinnati. The Cincinnati Bengals gave right tackle Bobby Hart a 3-year, $21 million deal.
Why?
Bobby Hart wasn't somebody that I thought was particularly impressive. A 3 years, I mean, he's around that, like, what's he around, like Bobby Massey's contract. He's around like Brian Bulaga's contract. He is around Chris Hubbard's contract, which I was a little surprised at how high he got paid by Cleveland after being the backup to. He was the backup to Marcus Gilbert in Pittsburgh. I really didn't get this deal whatsoever. I don't know who else was trying to give that kind of money to Bobby Hart. Good for him for getting his money, though. Next one was Jamison Crowder to the Jets. 3-year, $28.5 million deal. Nearly $10 million a year for Jamison Crowder. You know, I have a weird thing. Like, when I hear Jamison Crowder, like, I just get this weird feeling. No diss to Jamison Crowder, but I'm in this same mode of, like, a Devin Funchess, Jamison Crowder, like, these type of guys who are put in as the number one guy on a team, and maybe it's not necessarily fair to them that I think of them like this, but like they're put as like the guy team, wide receiver one, and I just don't know why you give a guy like that nearly $10 million a year. Maybe they see something in him that I don't yet. Maybe his career hasn't been particularly astonishing in Washington, but he's always just one of those guys that, you know, like I think of when like I'm doing fantasy football and I'm just like I want him as my wide receiver 3 or 4 or not on my team. He's just one of those guys. Not particularly bad by any means, but just not who I want to be my wide receiver 1. The Jets gave Quincy Enunwa a big contract too, so, and he's in that same boat. So they're good pieces, but the Jets should have really been in that sweepstakes to try to get Antonio Brown, unless they didn't want, you know, Antonio and Sam Darnold to have problems, which I would understand. It just feels like the Jets still need, they're giving these guys wide receiver 1 money or close to it, and they still don't have a wide receiver 1. However, I do think that this deal shows that the Jets are unlikely to be in that third spot. I think that they're going to trade down. Either they trade down or they're getting a pass rusher. So look for Josh Allen. If Nick Bosa is somehow there by the grace of God for New York, that can make a lot of sense, even though I'll give you guys a little bit of a heads up on my draft board. Quentin Williams, number 1. Next up, not necessarily a marquee signing, but I thought it was noteworthy. The Bills signed Frank Gore to a 1-year, $2 million deal. Shout outs to Frank Gore for just continuing to play. Like, I don't know how, I wouldn't call him like the Vince Carter of the NFL. Maybe like Kyle Korver. Like, I don't know, man. Frank's in the top 10 all-time rushing. He might even be top 5. I think he's over Bettis now, and that's just due to, you know, how long that he's played in the league. He was never like the number 1 running back in the league or anything, but he was always really, really good. Yeah, it's a good deal. Maybe Kyle Korver is a little bit too much of a slight, but he's also one of the greatest three-point shooters of all time. So this is a Band-Aid for if they're going to draft or they're going to look for another guy in free agency in the next few years. But for now, it's not a bad stoppage gap. Next up, real quick, again, not a big signing, but Jesse James to Detroit. Me as a Pittsburgh fan, I do love Jesse James. I do hope for the best for him. We do have Vance McDonald, and I know that Vance has taken much of Jesse James's role, but I always liked Jesse. He was a good player, kind of middle of the road tight end, but middle of the road starting tight end, and hopefully he succeeds in Detroit. I wish nothing but the best for him. Next up, Kenny Vaccaro on a 4-year deal worth $26 million, $11.5 million guaranteed to the Tennessee Titans. This one, I was really big in Kenny Vaccaro a few years ago. I'm kind of scratching my head a little bit on this just because he didn't really have a particularly good season. This is a deep free agency class, so I thought that the Titans would try to be a little bit more active in the top guys, but before giving Kenny a 4-year deal. Yeah, I think that they should have been going after a bit more bigger names. Next up, Nick Foles to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Here it is, Big Dick Nick. 4 years, $88 million, $50.125 million guaranteed. Wow. There you go, Nick. I think this is 11th biggest quarterback contract currently. So obviously, I don't think Nick is the 11th best quarterback in the league. But again, we're talking market. I don't hate this. I'm a guy that's been massive fan. That wasn't a dick reference. A massive fan of Nick Foles when he came out of college. I believe Nick is a starting quarterback in the NFL. You know, this is a ton of money. He's making $22 million a year, around that Ben Roethlisberger money. Even as a Steelers fan and a guy that's been very, very critical of Ben, I still think Ben's a better quarterback. I still think guys around that deal like Kirk Cousins are still a better quarterback. Jimmy Garoppolo is a better quarterback. But, you know, that tier below, that's where Nick is. Nick's better than Joe Flacco, straight up. Joe makes more money than him. So I get this deal. The Jaguars are in win-now mode. With that great defense, they need a guy that can go and win them some games instead of just trying to not lose them games in Blake Bortles. It made the most sense for the Jaguars to do this deal, and it made the most sense for Nick Foles to go to Jacksonville. A deal that warms my heart a little bit. Deshaun Jackson back to Philly. I love Deshaun in Philly. Okay, so we do not know the money, but Terrell Suggs is going to Arizona. Finally, a older veteran player going to Arizona that wasn't formerly a Pittsburgh Steeler. It was an AFC North player, though. Terrell Suggs was a nail in my spine. Was that the phrase?
You stupid, dumb, doo-doo face.
He was a thorn in my side.
What are you?
An idiot sandwich.
Juwan James, 4-year, $52 million deal with $33 million of it guaranteed. I'm above two ways about this. I always think it's smart to give offensive linemen that are really good big contracts. But I don't know what Denver's plans are if they're trying to get a quarterback next year and to have Juwan James secured there. Maybe that's smart. Obviously, they still need a good line for Philip Lindsay to run over. But I don't know. I'm about two ways about this. I've always thought he's a good player. He's not number one tackle or right tackle money to me, so I'm a little bit down on this. But I still am a fan of giving your offensive line a lot of money so that you're secure there. But they don't have a quarterback to be secure there, so all they're really doing this for is Philip Lindsay, and I'm still waiting for that. I still feel like there could have been linemen that they could have made trades for, or they could have signed in free agency this year or next year that probably would have made a little bit more sense than this deal here. I'll talk about two deals that happened before that Quan deal, which was Malik Jackson going for, I think it was 3-year, $30 million to the Eagles. The Eagles have a ton of linemen. They did just trade Bennett to New England. The Eagles, that's how they won their title, was just having so many D-line that everybody was fresh. So I think that they're trying to get back to that. I don't know if Malik Jackson was that type of guy, though. He had a down year last year. I still feel like the Eagles see that potential in Malik, and I could easily see him having a huge turnaround season. But I think there is a lot of risk still in signing Malik and giving him that contract. And lastly, the Oakland Raiders gave left tackle Trenton Brown a 4-year, $66 million deal with $36.75 million guaranteed. I'm a little bit down on this deal. Trenton Brown had his first year with New England at left tackle last year. He did fare pretty well, I think. But this is a situation where you're giving a ton of money to this guy. I do like that they're committed. Again, the same thing. I like that they're committing to offensive line to help Derek Carr because he is their guy. I don't know why. I just said that like a song.
Here we go round the mulberry bush.
This draft has good linemen here, and I think that they could have gotten a lineman to develop and have him just as good as Trenton Brown or around Trenton Brown in the next. They draft him this year and they develop him for 2 years or so, and by that third year he's there. But maybe they don't want to wait. Maybe they want to. Maybe the Raiders have a bigger plan, and it is to spend a ton of money and to try to win now. I don't see the Raiders winning now. I just don't. Even with Antonio Brown, who I think is a phenomenal receiver. I watched him for years. I love the kid, but I just don't see the Raiders really contending like that. So I'm slightly more down on this. To kind of recap, I love the Landon Collins deal for Landon Collins. I thought he got the best deal for himself. I think Jacksonville probably took the biggest risk, but I think that it has a ton of reward value. Try to win a championship now. I don't blame you guys. For my heart's sake, I like the Deshaun Jackson to Philly. I love the Tyrann Mathieu deal. The Chiefs are going to be phenomenal next year. Absolutely phenomenal. I wasn't huge on the wide receiver deals, but I do like the Quan Alexander deal. So that's the video. Thank you guys for watching this video. It means a lot. You can follow everything that's going to go on with Across the Board on Twitter and Instagram here. And then you can also follow what I'm doing personally on Twitter and Instagram here. Thank you guys.